Welcome to the Festivus Podcast, Executive Edition, supported by Libery Consulting and hosted by Julian Scott, animation consultant at Film London. I'm Rob Doherty, and in this podcast series we chat to the head honchos, the big cheeses, the numero unos of the kids and family media world. Theirs are the names you see on credits and conference listings with executive alongside. And you've wondered, how did they get there? What influenced them? Who inspired them? And how do I get there? Along the way, hopefully, we'll get to know these enigmatic and powerful people just a little better and realise, wait, they're just like normal human beings after all. And maybe, just maybe, I too can reach those dizzying heights in my career. I hope you enjoy their journeys. If you'd be interested in sponsorship or advertising of this podcast, or indeed the website and events, please drop us a line at aloha@fstvs.net. That's aloha@fstvs.net. Feel free to suggest guests too.
Welcome to the podcast. Today's guest is Emmet O'Neil, Chief Exec of Dublin-based StoryToys, a role he's held for over 6 years. StoryToys is a leading developer and publisher of award-winning apps and games for children, with a client roster that reads like a who's who of global entertainment. Disney, Marvel, Mattel, Hasbro, Penguin Random House, BBC Studios, Paramount, Nickelodeon, and Sesame Workshop. The company has racked up over 300 million downloads worldwide across major app platforms. We're catching Emmet on the eve of his creative keynote at the Children's Media Conference, a talk billed as an accidental journey from illustrator to StoryToys CEO. So naturally, the first question has to be, is he accident prone? Emmet, welcome to the podcast.
Great to be here, Julian. Really excited about it.
So without giving too much of the keynote away, are you accident prone?
I'm not accident prone. And you know, to be honest, most of my life I've actually had a fairly purposeful trajectory, right? I'm quite deliberate in what I want to do. But I think what is interesting is I decided a path for myself at a very early age, and through setbacks, through things happening in life, through life happening itself, I guess I wound up going on a very different direction. And certainly my ambition was never to run a business. And if you'd, even 10 years ago, if you'd asked if I would ever run a business, my answer would be no. So it's kind of about the unexpected things that happen to you in life along the way that kind of propel you forward, positively sometimes too, you know?
But you said that you had a grand plan. Was this something that occurred to you? You know, because you started off as an illustrator. When you were a kid, were you always like pencil in hand, whatever was going on, you were drawing people, places, things like that?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think I was about 7 or 8 when I decided that was going to be the career I'd pursue. So I really was pretty determined as a youngster, and was always drawing, always making creative work, and thrived, and not just drawing, but building things, making things, all of that sort of thing. So yeah, very much chose a creative path very, very early on.
7 is quite early to decide what you want to do. I mean, there's a famous phrase. I can't remember. It's Baz Luhrmann, isn't it, who said, most of the people, don't worry if you don't know what to do in life. Most people I know at the age of 40 still have no clue. So 7 is very young to have that sense of what you want to do.
It's kind of, I think, I was thinking about this recently. I turned 50, and I've been, I guess, probably a bit self-indulgently reflective. And I was trying to think, okay, what makes a child do that? And so when I was 6 years old, my parents moved to another part of Ireland, right? This shouldn't be the greatest trauma in the world. It's not like moving countries or anything like that. But literally, we moved from comfortable suburban lifestyle on the outskirts of Dublin down to Cork in Southern Ireland. And honestly, you may as well have gone to the moon. And I think at that stage, it pushed me towards this kind of it really pushed my creativity forward. And I think that and I've found that creativity is something that really can manifest in times of stress. Do you know that literally as you're and throughout my life, I've used creativity and the creation of art as a coping mechanism during very difficult periods. And I think that first traumatic and difficult period was basically being taken from our nice, comfortable lifestyle and basically brought to sort of rural backwater cottage to live. And I think it actually probably did similar things to my older sibling and my younger sibling too. So I think we all just got this sort of jolt, shock, and it kind of brought something out in all of us, you know.
Do any of those illustrations from your days in Cork still exist?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'll even have a couple of them probably snuck into the keynote.
I'm definitely coming. I was going to come anyway, but I'm definitely coming now. So, you know, with you know, at 7, you decided, right, this is the career I want to go for. And you ended up going to, and I'll probably pronounce this wrong, so I apologise. Is it Dunlochair Institute of Art and Design?
It's actually simpler than that. It's Dunleary.
Is it? Dunleary.
Dunleary.
Okay.
Yeah.
I knew I'd get that wrong.
That's okay.
But heading towards that, did anybody... Did you have great support from your family, or was there people saying, you know what, Emmet, you really need to get yourself a proper job? Think about becoming an accountant or a lawyer or something like that.
So my mother describes, and I think somewhat unfairly, describes her parenting style as one of benign neglect. As I said, I don't think that was quite fair because she was brilliant. But, you know, photographer father, actress mother, I don't think they can give you any crap over deciding you want to do something creative, you know? So no, I was, I wouldn't say, I certainly wasn't pushed down that route, you know, or they had no ambitions or determination that any of us would follow any particular route. But, you know, with certainly support and encouragement along the way for sure, yeah.
And do your siblings, are they in the same kind of sector?
Well, interestingly, the former CEO of StoryToys was my brother. So yeah, so basically, I took over from him 6 plus years ago. But yeah, I worked with him for 6 years with him as CEO. He now works in food technology investment in Japan. So he's a very creative guy, and yeah, definitely very, very creative. And my sister is a playwright, and funnily enough, who is also currently working in StoryToys. But yeah, she's had you know, many plays on in the Fringe Festival over here, or in the you know, she's had stuff on in our National Theatre, the Abbey. So yeah, successful playwright sister.
Cool.
And actress.
And what was it like working for your brother?
You know, I think so. I was reluctant to work with him. There's 4 years age difference between each of us, and I think if you're having children and you want your kids not to be friends as children, 4 years is the perfect age gap. It's not long enough for nurturing to come into play, but it's too long to have too much in common. So I would say, you know, we weren't close as children, but aside from our shared trauma, right? Yeah. But we basically. The working together thing was absolutely fantastic because we became really, really close in our adult lives. So I really value that opportunity, and I value that time that we had together. I learned a ton from working with him. Yeah. So while I was initially reluctant to, and of course, you know, I think the company was wondering, why the hell is he hiring his brother? You know, surely there are more qualified people to do this job. But no, I think it was a fantastic experience. One I really, really value, both from what I learned from him, but also from the, you know, we basically, I suppose, wound up, you know, in all sorts of tricky circumstances because the business had a lot of difficulties back in those days, but in good circumstances too, and traveling to different places together. We spent a lot of time together, and yeah, I think that was a gift. That was an absolute gift.
It's fantastic. So just spinning back a little bit to uni, what was your uni experience like?
I absolutely loved it. I thrived. I was a punk, and I was, living with my girlfriend and a couple of buddies, and it was, we would. I would be in college every day by 9:30 a.m. No matter how late the night had been, and I would stay in college until about 9 p.m. We would come home, scarf some food, and then like draw and create, till midnight, 2 a.m. Like it was, it was just like-minded creative people doing really, really interesting work and working every hour under the sun. So yeah, absolutely thrived in it and really, really enjoyed it.
It's quite impressive that a student's, at uni at sort of, not, well, I suppose before midday really. Is that sort of work ethic, or that thing that you had when you were a student, going in early and staying late and then going home and carrying on with the creativity? Is that a work ethic that continues with you to this date?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I these days, I will do my working day, and I'll do a do a long enough working day. But, because a lot of our licensing partners are based on the West Coast, there'll be emails flying around that either you can have a 24-hour gap in all communications, or you can sort of, keep a half an eye on it and be responsive. So yeah, so basically, I'll stop for dinner, but then usually after that, I always try and get in maybe 2 or 3 hours of drawing a night. So, although because I don't draw in a work context these days, so I have far more talented people employed to do that sort of stuff. But I know that I'm a happier, better adjusted person when I am creating things. So yeah, I'll basically I'll spend 2-3 hours, as many nights as I can. And with work travel, obviously that gets compromised, but certainly when I'm at home, that's my routine. Yeah, and even on weekends, I will usually have 2 or 3 major creative projects, whether it's like paintings or our drawings or whatever it might be, or even some sculpted work. Or I'm doing a ton of laser cutting and laser printing of things at the moment. I'll always have some side creative projects that I'm kind of pushing at any given time.
That's kind of interesting because, sort of going back to the, you thrived at uni, you were very dedicated to what you were doing, and you were creating stuff after hours, if you like. But the first job that you did, if I've got this right, is after uni, was quite a senior leadership role at Electric Paper, where you were overseeing design and e-learning. That seems quite a long way away from what you were doing at uni.
Yeah, so it's an interesting one, and funnily enough, like many things in life, it's a bit more complicated than that, and there's a little bit of overlap. But when I was in third year of college, my parents separated, and they were no longer able to support me.
Right.
So at that point in time, I went and I negotiated with the college that they would allow me to basically to work professionally as part of my college education. So I started working with that Electric Paper company long before I wrapped up college. So I was doing summer work, Easter work, all that kind of thing. And then by my degree year, I think I did maybe Thursday, Friday, Saturday for them, and then did the rest of the days in college, with Sunday to sort of do academic work. So I kind of it was, by the time I graduated from college, I had actually quite a substantial portfolio of professional work under my career, which I was basically doing in parallel to college.
And that sounds a little bit like the beginnings of the business side, the commercial side of what you now do, beginning to sort of come out and blossom, because you were clearly faced with a situation where you wanted to carry on with your degree, but financially things had changed an awful lot. So you came up with a business solution, for want of a better phrase, to allow you to keep going at college. Was that the beginnings of that sort of business creative conjoining?
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought of it like that, but it's a fair observation. I guess, yeah, it was just, for me, it was just about continuity. It was about what enables continuity, and maybe that's why I'm the CEO of the company now. But it has always been about what is the solution that enables me to do the thing that I want to do. No, I actually, and it's something I will go into in the presentation, but I found out quite early on that I was basically potentially going to lose my sight entirely. Now,
wow.
That didn't happen, but my vision wound up distorted enough that a career as a professional illustrator at the level that I wanted to operate was no longer viable. So that in turn basically made me kind of go, okay, well, I better look at this management track a little bit more seriously. So yeah, it was that circumstance in life, and it coincided with my wife's pregnancy on our first child. So I think I found out, I think we had the sort of the scan where we found out the gender in May. And then in June, like about a month later, I found out I had this rare degenerative eye condition that could potentially result in total blindness. So when you've basically set out to be an illustrator, that's a bit of a setback, and particularly when oh my God, I'm going to need quite a lot of money, quite a lot more money, very, very quickly. So yeah, that was kind of, I think, what set me on down that track.
A bit of a setback, I think, is a slight understatement. That's huge.
Well, I mean, as you can see now, obviously without spoiling my talk, my sight did not deteriorate much further than it had at that point. But as I said, it was still enough that I could never be the illustrator that I wanted to be. So it put me on a different track for sure. Yeah.
And talking of that track, I mean, you had quite a varied career between those early days at leaving uni, joining Electric Paper, and then going into StoryToys, I think, as Chief Product Officer. And you said, from a very early age, you had a grand plan. That grand plan, was that sort of in 2 years, I want to be doing this. In 4 years, I want to be doing this. And then 6 years, I want to be doing that. Or was it a little bit less rigid than that?
So, believe it or not, even though it looks like I have an absolutely chaotic CV in the middle. So I basically have about 12, 13 years with this Electric Paper company in its various guises at the start. Then these chaotic 6-7 years where I seem to yo-yo between a lot of different industries, and then StoryToys for the last kind of 13 years. But there was, the middle bit actually did have a level of intent to it. I became really fascinated with the transition that was happening. I guess I had amassed extraordinary levels of digital skills, right? Mm-hmm. And I had watched the transformation of the music industry, as it literally kind of more or less disappeared with, MP3s, Napster, all of that kind of thing. And so I became really fascinated with how does an industry transition digitally. And so I worked for what was, and probably still is, Ireland's biggest film and TV company, and helped them digitally transition, set up, I think, probably the first digital film distribution platform in Ireland, and also, helped them with kind of 360 as it was called at the time, content strategies, all of that sort of thing. Then then basically went to what was a very traditional advertising. It was Ireland's biggest ad agency. I went to work with them. Again, they were TV content, print ads. That was what they were doing. Nothing digital. So I went in there and set up a digital department and basically started them out on their kind of transformative version to journey to becoming a digital version of themselves. And I mean, I think they were ultimately bought by Accenture and, are primarily a digital agency these days. So, and then the next one after that was a publishing company, and it was like a publishing company established in the 1830s that was already well on the way to a sort of a digital already well on the way on its digital journey, but there was still a lot that needed to be kind of figured out. And it was a really exciting kind of time because the iPad had just come out. So I became fascinated by digital transformation, basically. That's that, and so I went around and set up a series of digital teams in businesses, most of which still have their digital teams today and have gone on to be very successful. But yeah, so that was the theme, Now, of course, there were twists and turns along the way, and some, some like I was kind of, I probably left some places earlier than I should have, or stayed around too long in others. But the theme was digital transformation and basically trying to also learn about those other industries. That was absolutely fascinating to me, to basically switch completely to a different industry, go in with zero context for how publishing works, for example, but know how to set up a digital team and know how to run creative operations in that context. And so it was just this fascinating period because, I learned so much about working across these different industries. You have to learn a full new vocabulary. You have to basically, you embrace a completely different industry. And that to me was really exciting, but it was almost psychopathically hard or challenging on myself, like in that you're just in a constant state of extreme learning,
Yeah. And you talk there about setting up teams and stuff like that. Is that something that comes naturally to you?
I think that's actually probably what it's probably the thing that I do best is set up creative teams. Yeah. I love it. I love going in and figuring out, oh my God, this person is extremely gifted at this thing, but they've been doing this other stupid thing. Why don't we let them do the thing they're really good at and get somebody else to do the stupid thing that maybe they're really good at, So for example, going into the publishing house, they had probably the most talented concept artist I've ever worked with. And they had him doing wireframes for interface UX wireframes for interface designs. He was terrible at it. He was massively overpaid for the work he was doing, and he didn't enjoy it. So it's like, I have a job for you. Would you like to do some concept art? This stuff isn't rocket science. Get people doing what they're really good at, and give them a shared purpose and a common creative goal. And you can move mountains.
It's not rocket science, no, but I think it's a skill or a talent that is sadly lacking in a lot of chief executives. To be honest with you, that ability to be in an environment, a working environment with your team and within your company, and to be able to spot these things and see, well, that person's maybe not that happy doing what they're doing at the moment, but they've got a real skill for something over here. And I suppose having the courage to then say, I suppose you probably don't go up and say, oh, I can see you're unhappy, but to be able to offer them an opportunity. I mean, that's a rare talent.
I think I've been really lucky with the people I've worked with, but this is ridiculous. But like I attribute a lot of that to watching a lot of the Muppet Show as a child. You know,
Really?
Yeah. I claim that I learned most of my leadership skills from Kermit the Frog. You literally have this character who's basically got this. He's kind of pushing it. It's almost a Stephensian pushing a boulder up a hill task every week of getting the show out, right? But he's got these varying degrees of talented people that he's working with, and he somehow manages to make it happen every week. And I just think that kind of that bringing creative chaos together, that's definitely that was a big inspiration for me.
Did you know that Festivus is so much more than just this podcast? Not only do we host regular free networking mixers in London, Annecy, Munich, Manchester, Bristol, Cannes and many other locations, as we have done now for 21 years, via our website we have so much more industry-related information that can be accessed. More creative-focused podcasts to illuminate and educate, the latest training courses and other invaluable resources to help power your career. And we also have a jobs board to advertise roles directly to our 3,500 website subscribers and over 13,000 social media followers. Sign your studio up now and take advantage of our extremely reasonable rates for job postings. You'll be hitting the motherlode of creative talent. Go to FSTVS.net and start your day the Festivus way.
Well, I love the fact that everything I learnt in business, I learnt from Kermit the Frog. That's a great thing to be able to say, and actually leads me very neatly into the next thing I wanted to talk to you about, which is you've been involved as media director at a production company in New York called No Strings Productions, which creates life-changing puppet films for kids. And through that, it addresses some very serious issues: child protection, peace building, and disaster preparedness. And talking about your accidental journey, that doesn't feel like an accident to me. That feels like something very, I don't know, defined that you ended up doing. How did that happen?
So when I was in the publishing company, I somehow managed to persuade them to give me a lot of money to go and make a series of educational Muppet-style puppet videos. And so I spent months in Austin, Texas, in a studio. We made hundreds of these videos, and they were really good. They were really, really good. It was an extraordinary piece of work and a really creatively fulfilling time for me. Because I went on set, I puppeteered, I directed some of them, and just really brought it together because it was my crazy idea and I wasn't going to inflict it on anybody else to execute on. So during the course of that, I was working with an extremely talented puppeteer who was really educating the whole crew and myself on the actual production aspects of everything as we went along. So she was involved with the No Strings charity, mm-hmm. and the interesting thing about No Strings, I suppose, it's about bringing films to disaster-struck regions. So I mean, landmine awareness, right? That kind of thing. So you literally have somebody traveling around on a motorbike in a war-torn region, going to village halls, showing the films, and then doing kind of counseling workshops afterwards, that sort of thing. And they have been transformative. Like we had a film shown in Haiti that after the tsunamis, and there was a little girl who hadn't spoken in over a year since, I think, probably the death of her parents or her relocation or whatever, and our film was about a child who wouldn't speak, and she started speaking after watching the film. That's literally life-changing stuff. So anyway, they basically, that's the one aspect, and it's the key aspect of it. But I actually think there's kind of almost a secondary aspect to this, and I think it's about generational passing down of talent and techniques. So the the people behind it are Kathy Mullen, who was an extremely well-known puppeteer. She puppeteered several of the lead characters in Fraggle Rock. She was also she's very well known for doing a lot of the Yoda work in Empire Strikes Back, alongside Frank Oz, of course. And then in Dark Crystal, she was Kira, the principal character. So, you've phenomenally talented puppeteering talent. There's also Sharon Lerner. Sharon Lerner was like employee number 6 in Sesame. She was charged with sort of curriculum and all of this sort of thing. She was brilliant woman. Really, really knows about creating kids content. And then Michael Frith. Now, Michael Frith was Ted Geisel's creative director. So he basically oversaw a lot of the Seuss books, and really gifted illustrator. He was, I think he was maybe creative director or art director in Random House for a period of time, where basically they started doing the Sesame Street books. He then basically started working for Sesame Street, and then Jim hired him from there. And like Michael designed Fozzie Bear. He didn't design Animal, but he designed the rest of Electric Mayhem. He designed like Miss Piggy's origins are more debated, but he's basically was the lead illustrator for Piggy and all that sort of stuff. So basically the creators of all of that TV content that I just said I found inspiring as a child. These are the guys who are running that charity, and so I kind of at that point in time, the puppeteer that I'd been working with on the publisher shoot, she invited me to meet them and to take part in some of the shoots in New York. Now, by that time, I was working in StoryToys, but it was an incredible opportunity. So, and at the time, my brother Barry knew how much it meant to me. So he would, whenever they were doing a shoot, we would free up my schedule. And of course, we had so many clients and partners in New York anyway, that it was always justified to go and spend some time there. So I basically, whenever they were doing a shoot, I would go over and, help out. And yeah, and they all became, close friends over a period of time. Just last year, I was in Bermuda with Michael and Kathy. Sorry, he's originally Bermudian, and they were running a major retrospective of his artwork over there. So I popped over to visit for that. So yeah, we're I think in the children's industry in general, because you do work that is so close to your heart, and particularly when it's meaningful work like that. I think everybody becomes, you become close to these people over time too, right?
No, absolutely, and yeah, kids' content has always, I think, been at the heart of what you do. And you said of StoryToys that you wanted to get your content available in as many places as possible. And I think I've got this quote right, as a healthy alternative to some other things, which are less appropriate for children. Having done all that work, that's, as you just said, and I could see in your face when you were talking about the girl who hadn't spoken, how much that meant to you, the effect that puppet video had on that one child. What in your mind, what makes a healthy and an educational app successful?
Well, I think that it's funny that I'm not sure that the things that make it successful are the things that make it healthy, if you know what I mean. So like the alchemy is how do you make something that's successful despite being healthy, right? Okay. Because the reality of it is all of the tricks in mobile around dopamine hits, addiction, exploitive currency practices, all of those things are the things that make successful mobile apps, right? But we've chosen to sort of to take to recognize that you'll never attain that level of financial success in a kid's play in the kid space and still be able to feel good about yourself or sleep at night, because the reality of it is, it would be too easy to kind of to do those exploitive practices. So for us, it's about, okay, can we make something that is non-addictive but compelling, right? Something that is educationally.
What's the difference between compelling and non-addictive?
Well, I think you want something that a child feels the need to come back to and wants to check in on, but doesn't feel driven to, doesn't feel like that they absolutely, that they can't put it down, right? So something that encourages breaks, something that encourages, so for example, some of the apps would have timers in them, and if a kid's on it for too long, they will push them back. But also, I suppose for us, really, it's actually more in the creative philosophy of the content creation, in that we try and make everything. It's not goal oriented, right? So you're not creating these tiny little dopamine hit loops, right? Whereby beat a level, and work your way through. What we try and do is create content where the child can basically both input themselves into the play experience, so there's room for their own creativity. We try not to have an on rails narrative, but also generally no beginning, no middle, no end, right? So there's a beginning, but you don't want to have something where basically in that working through levels kind of way, you want to have something where the kid picks it up, can play with a toy. And I think our stuff is much more analogous to playing with a toy than playing with a game, right? A game it tends to be goal oriented and has a very specific outcome. A toy you're doing for the pure joy of play. And that's when we do it right, that's the kind of sweet spot that we hit.
This podcast is made possible thanks to the support of the awesome Liberi Consulting. Liberi offers specially tailored industry-related training courses. Check them out at libericonsulting.com. That's LIBERI consulting.com. You can also find links to their fantastic courses on the Festivus website.
And it's interesting when you're talking about the creativity and the commercial reality of what you need to achieve in order to run a business. And there's this popular idea that the right side of the brain controls creativity and the left handles business. And if that is the case, both sides of your brain working equally, or does one sometimes win over the other, or is it that I think they call it whole brain thinking?
Yeah, I don't know, and it's an interesting one, because obviously one can only really apply thought patterns based on what you've experienced yourself, and for me, the biggest frustration in my life is that I feel that a myth has been perpetuated that some people are right-brained, some people are left-brained. I think a brain is a muscle that you can work on and you can develop, right? So yeah, maybe some people have let their right side or left side atrophy a little bit. Maybe they haven't worked those muscles as hard as they can, but I think a creative person sort of saying, oh no, I can't possibly do that because that's too business-like or whatever. It's that kind of crap that has led to the exploitation of creative people by business people for probably centuries, but certainly pretty intensely for the last number of decades. I really do think that it behooves all creatives to take a little bit more responsibility for their own commercial success. Sorry, you got me on one of my soapbox topics, but
carry on. No, it's a great soapbox.
I think that by perpetuating that narrative, by perpetuating that stereotype, we do creatives a huge disservice, And I also think that, you know, you could counter it to people who think commercially. You know, the amount of creativity that is actually involved in running a business, and so much of business is based on narratives, storytelling, narrative driven content. You know, you can't argue that commercial people are not creative in their own way. You know, so I'm a believer that I don't believe I'm whole brain thinking, but I think everybody has the potential to be, and is just falling into stereotypes by picking a side.
How do you think we can, as an industry, as a sector, we could address or change that way of belief?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think it has to start in education. I think it has to start in the colleges, and you know, I think that's certainly where I would have got my grounding of, what does it mean to be a creative person, right? You know, and you've got a bunch of creative lecturers who are, you know, much more interested in seeing a person draw and, you know, bringing the best work out of that person, and you know, they're phenomenal at doing that. But I also think they should feel invested in the future success of that person beyond that limited lens. So I reckon, yeah, college education is where it really, really needs to happen, and probably even a little bit earlier. You know, even a little bit earlier. But I think breaking that cycle in colleges would seem like the easiest place to do it, and that is just investing in people a sense of urgency about their own commercial responsibility, and whether that commercial responsibility is just their own ability to earn on an ongoing basis, their own ability to, you know, I've interviewed. God, I've probably interviewed close to 1,000 creatives over my years as you know, running art departments and what have you, and you know, I've had people who have sat on the other side, and you know, when you've talked to them about salary expectations, and you know, in relatively recent times, said, "Oh, how does a $5 an hour sound?" You know, like, well, creative people devalue their own work that much. You know, you've a really, really serious problem. So I think firstly, it's about giving people the confidence to set pricing appropriately, to stand up for it, to understand enough about the business side to basically to argue their case. I think if the colleges could start to do that we would have a more entrepreneurial minded, and I think we actually were, like, you know, at the danger of sort of slightly jumping topic, I think we're at a time where creative people need to be more agile, need to be more entrepreneurial, need to be able to fight off the kind of the threat of AI, and so I think we need to rethink how people are being taught in colleges just a little bit, because otherwise, you know, a smaller number of people are going to be even more exploited in the next generation.
It's interesting you mentioned AI there, because it is a topic I wanted to chat to you about, and very happy to chat about it now. I was listening to a thing on the radio this morning, which is not connected to necessarily to the creative sector, but I think it was somebody who works for one of the big AI companies who was saying, you know, excuse me, we're in danger, or on the cusp of AI beginning to develop itself. The human input into AI is lessening. So in terms of what you do, what animation studios do, what games producers do, where do you see AI heading in the short, medium, and long term?
So, as a technologist, I've been fascinated by this for a long time, right? And I've always had a foot in the technology side of things as well. I've been able to do sort of at different times in my life some level of rudimentary programming, enough to sort of to get ideas across, make things work, or at least not be bullshitted by a software engineer when they tell you they can't do something. So I've always had a technology track and always been really, really interested. So I started playing around with AI, I don't know, 5 years ago or something like that. I was like, there's something really interesting here. And I was a little bit terrified, to be honest. I was looking at it going, ooh, if this continues at this pace, I'm not going to have a job or a company and at the time I thought 5 years. I thought, yeah, this actually is a creative existential issue. And then as time has gone on since then, and it's sort of entered the zeitgeist, entered the mainstream and what have you, like I'm looking at the, things are shinier, things are more impressive, the tricks are better. But it's still not mission ready by any stretch, right? And something that basically something that's right 90% of the time, it's still wrong 10% of the time. And something that I have said before is it's kind of like having really arrogant, really enthusiastic interns, who are also have huge gaps in their knowledge. So there's inherent limitations to what AI can do at the moment. And it causes problems left, right, and center. I think like any technology, there's a thing called the Gartner hype cycle, which you may or may not be familiar with, but so the Gartner hype cycle is basically when a new technology comes on the scene, you basically have these massively inflated expectations of what that technology is going to achieve and what it can do. You then you hit peak expectations, and then it plunges into what they call the trough of disillusionment, when everybody realizes, oh, this technology isn't actually going to change the world in the way we thought. It's not as impactful, and so you plunge into what they call the trough of disillusionment, and then you basically come out the other side. And when you come out the other side, half the companies are gone. But you actually wind up with practical, useful tools. And I am waiting desperately for us to get to that other side where basically the AI bubble bursts and people are like, oh yeah, well, this is actually quite handy for distilling large amounts of information, and it is quite good for automating certain coding tasks when overseen by a human. And hey, you know what? I can even perform some rudimentary illustrative tasks on this, in a controlled way for background extension, all that kind of thing in Photoshop. So when we get to that point that people are just using it on a day-to-day basis in a practical way, I'll be delighted, because it's like, it's going to replace all the humans. It's going to do this. It's going to do that. I just don't buy into it. I think it has the potential. I am actually an AI proponent in general. I may not sound like it, but I actually do believe in the technology. But I just believe in it with a much narrower lens than people are kind of thinking about it at the moment. So I think we basically need the AI bubble to burst, and then some useful tools to come out of it. I know there remain ethical issues around AI, the training data, all of the environmental impact, all of that kind of thing. Like, I kind of believe, in terms of training data, the genie's out of the bottle. That's just the way it is. I think it's wrong. I think there should be some level of compensation for people whose works have been used in this context. But I don't see a situation where we put the genie back in. So that I just accept as cost. On the environmental side, I think we will see significant strides and improvements in that area. I also think that when we get to a point where it is used in more meaningful and practical ways, there's potential pluses in terms of what it can do from productivity way to enough to justify what would otherwise also have been work that would have also had an environmental impact. So, I think there's a lot that I think there's look, I'm an optimistic person. I believe there's actually a rosy coexistent future where, we will all in subtle ways be using AI as part of our jobs on a day-to-day basis. This will not be about job loss, but it will in fact be about enabling us to do work more quickly and taking out some of the drudge work along the way. I think the only downside to all of that is, at one point in time I used to hand render type, and I learned more by hand rendering type about form, space, geometry, than probably 10 years of drawing prior to that, right? Sometimes you learn a lot from the dross work, right? Sometimes the drudgery stuff is actually informs your work further on. So I do worry about that side of it in terms of where do your future art directors come from if they haven't actually put in their hours of practice doing drudgery work,
No, I was going to ask you about there's a lot of crossover in skills and talent between animation studios and game studios, and with the advent of AI, there's an awful lot of studios who are sort of scurrying around trying to find how they can include AI into their workflows. And what would you be advising a games company or a excuse me, or an animation studio now in terms of AI? Would you be saying to them, wait for the bubble to burst and just see what comes out at the other end? Or does everybody have to scurry to keep up with what's going on now?
I think where there are practical tools that have been developed by a third party, you should be exploring them or using them. What I wouldn't personally do is waste a lot of my own money, and when I say a lot of my own money, I mean my company's money, on developing out specific tools, because I think there's I think you could just burn through a lot of cash very, very quickly making your own stuff. But I think where tools are being developed, at least experiment with them in your workflow. So like, again, within StoryToys, I think we've something like 20,000 lines of code that are AI enhanced, augmented, or checked on a monthly basis. So we're using it, for coding. So everybody's going to have. So you're not going to use AI to suddenly start generating animated scenes, but I mean, I have friends in the animation industry who have developed out tools to do tweening. So you might have your key poses in 3D, but everything in between is coming directly from, through, not directly, but through an AI pipeline. And I think those kind of tools are fantastic. I think there's a lot of potential. Now, as I said, you still need the balance, because where does everybody learn how to do the key poses at the end if they haven't spent a lot of time doing the in-betweens? But I do think there are pragmatic tools that you can use and help as part of your workflow. And the stuff's everywhere. I mean, there's so many tools that have an utterly unnecessary AI layer thrown in. I'm sure we'll soon be getting toothpaste that says now with added AI. There's so much unnecessary use of AI in tools. But I think everybody could find things within their industry that make their lives a little bit easier. And I don't, as I said, the genie's out of the bottle. So a kind of a Luddite burn the machines attitude, you're just going to be overtaken by a competitor. So I do think even if you hate the concept of AI, some level of exploration of the tools in your industry is your responsibility, because whether it's to know your enemy better or to potentially learn something, or to potentially get some productivity gains. It's kind of I would say a necessary evil, because if you don't do it, somebody else is going to, and they will win the next contract over you, cheaper, faster, better, arguably not, but cheaper and faster for sure.
It sounds a little bit like what you were saying earlier on about creative people taking a bit more of a responsibility for the commercial side of their lives, and ignore AI at your peril, I think would be the message I'm getting. Yeah. So, I mean, clearly you still work exceptionally hard and everything else. I was looking at your, believe it or not, I do some research for these things. But, I was looking at your LinkedIn profile, and under your current position of chief exec at StoryToys is the skill pumpkin carving. Is that a real thing?
Yeah, I'm highly skilled at pumpkin carving.
Oh, yeah.
I look. Don't take my word for it. Take the endorsements on the on LinkedIn. I guess. Yeah, it was sort of. There have been times where I've let the creative side of myself down a little bit, and maybe I had probably had like a 15-year period in my life where I basically didn't draw or anything. But I would still always look for tiny outlets, and whether that was like the kids' costumes for the school play, having them going in, wow, they look great, or their Halloween costumes, or something like pumpkin carving. It was in the time in my life where I couldn't justify my creativity and hadn't figured out what an integral part of me that it was, and still was kind of getting over this discomfort of being, I suppose, betrayed by my body in terms of my eye and not being able to draw as well as I could have previously. You find these little things in life where they're legitimate means to be legitimate pockets of creativity in a normal dad life, I suppose, and pumpkin carving was one of them. So yeah, I just kind of saw a few things saw a few things posted online, and I was like, I could do that. And I got a rudimentary kitchen knife and a pumpkin, and I was like, oh yeah, I can do that. So I started doing it a couple of years ago. These days I try to also grow the pumpkins that I ultimately carve, although I didn't get them in the ground early enough this year, so I think I'll be using shop bought. But yeah, I love working in 3D, and I have no opportunities to do so. So it's my once a year, and it's really weird because every year I do it, and I've learned a little bit, but it's also, you're trying to remember what you did a year ago, and so each year you slightly improve, but it's the world's slowest learning curve, and it would just be, if I was carving them other times a year, it would just be weird, right? So it would. So I try to keep my enthusiastic hobby for like a once a year joyous thing that I really love to do. Yeah.
What's the most intricate carving you've ever done?
Oof. I usually just go with fairly gross out faces and that sort of thing. So they haven't. I think one year I did scales. So it was kind of like a fish face, like I guess creature from the Black Lagoon. And I did fish scales, like fully carved detail for each one. That was pretty intricate, but pretty repetitive. I'm actually thinking this year I may try and use a laser cutter on and combine laser cutting and pumpkin carving to bring two of my my excessive number of hobbies into the one place.
This I want to see. Maintaining good mental health, and I mean, they used to call it excuse me, a work-life balance, but I think it's more referred to as a work-life harmony these days. And you were saying earlier on, you do a full day's work, you'll have something to eat, you'll go back to doing something. Do you have, aside from pumpkin carving, you mentioned numerous hobbies, are there other things that you do and to sort of relax and balance home and work and home and family life?
Well, I'm Well, drawing is what I'm doing in the evenings, right? So I am drawing all of the time. But in terms of other hobbies, like, I mean, I run most days. I don't know if that's a hobby or just a physical maintenance thing, because I resisted physical exercise most of my life and realized, oh gosh, I probably need to start looking after myself a little better. But yeah, I would run most days. I do a ton of gardening. We grow a lot of our own food, and obviously that just comes with a lot of maintenance and what have you. So yeah, I spend this time of year paranoid about blight on the potatoes, a very, very Irish aspect of me, I think. I also spend my time worried about, will I have enough potatoes to get me through the winter? Will we still be eating our potatoes at Christmas time? So yeah, so I would say gardening and growing stuff, building things. Yeah, as I said, too many hobbies.
I think you must have the brain, the size of a brain of a small continent, with the amount of stuff that you've got going on.
Not at all. Not at all. I would say I'm seldom the smartest guy in a room, to be honest. But I am very curious about things and believe in my own ability to learn a new thing, and that basically, it's literally just growth mindset stuff. And I think anybody can do that. Anybody can do that. As I said, I genuinely, I know most of the time when I'm talking to a group of people, I'm like, yep, that person's 10 times smarter than me. That person's 10 times smarter than me. All of that kind of thing. But again, what I do manage to do is assimilate a lot of information very quickly, and then kind of come up with a different perspective by amalgamating it. You know what I mean? And so the synthesis of a lot of information in a short period of time, that's what I can do. Do you know?
Yeah, I do. No, I understand entirely. And I think I don't know if it's a skill or it's inherent in certain people, or a talent, or whatever it is. But if that's you, I think it's amazing.
Well, I'm certainly always grateful and happy, and like, and the thing is, you talked about work-life balance earlier. Like, in the end of the day, whatever I'm doing, I'm generally pretty happy. It's like I am happiest when I'm being productive. Do you know? And so whether it is chopping logs, or drawing pictures, or negotiating a contract, it's all just productivity. And I think one is happiest when one is productive. And you can either take an hour and do nothing, or you can take an hour and at the end of that hour say, hey, something exists in the world that didn't before. And even if you just start forcing yourself to do that, and I did start forcing myself to do that initially. You didn't have, even if you don't have anything you want to particularly say, just the act of creation, it's a very satisfying thing.
We're sort of coming towards the end of our chat now, and I wanted to ask you just three last questions. Has there been a single piece of advice that you've been given throughout your life as a kid, at uni, or through your career, a piece of advice that's remained with you and has become a bit of a marker or a mission statement?
Let's go to the next questions, if they're not directly related to it, because I want to think about that one a little bit more.
Okay, sure. My next question was, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years from now, when people look back at StoryToys and your contribution to the industry in general, what would you most like them to say or think?
I want that to actually be, I want that to be, as much as anything, about the people working in StoryToys, right? I would like a situation where they recognize that was a special place that they worked, and that they look back on that time as having created some of the greatest work of their career. I'd also like, in plenty of time, that the company has basically sets the seeds for many other companies. You know, that you get little pockets of people going off, and that, you know, there's maybe 10 games companies in Ireland that are based on ex StoryToys people in 20 years time. So for me, it would be largely about what have we done in terms of creating a harmonious place. You know, we've over 30 different nationalities in the company. We have, very rare for the games industry, we have pretty much 50-50 gender balance. We have people on the team with neurodiversity. Like we are. I want to have created a place where a lot of people have just had an opportunity to work that maybe wouldn't have necessarily otherwise as well. So that's a big part of it. But the other thing, and the other aspect to it, I'm actually already getting this, and that is being a part of childhood nostalgia. So we get reviews on the App Store from children who basically they'll talk about something like, I have a Hungry Caterpillar app called My Very Hungry Caterpillar, based on Eric Carle's wonderful book. And it's a kind of a Tamagotchi style experience where you're looking after a caterpillar and you take it from egg to butterfly. That gets the best reviews because it's been out for over 10 years. And so people come and they talk about how much this meant to them as a child, and, you know, how calming they found it and all of that kind of thing. And sometimes they'll say, you know, oh, I loved this when I was a child. Times were simpler back then, blah, 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 blah. You know, I'm 12 now. And you know, you're kind of like, what age does nostalgia kick in? Particularly in a digital world where everything is available to you. You know, it's not like it's not like you can kind of forget about something and then rediscover it in the same way as one could in a world where TV was, you know, you saw an episode and then you never saw it again unless, you know, you somehow saw it in VHS many years later. So I think I love being a part of that childhood nostalgia, and I know that a lot of kids already have that for StoryToys, and I hope in 20 years' time that we have positively influenced some kids out there.
Now, I was going to ask you, was going to be my final question, is now my penultimate question, and in fact you may have already answered this, which was what gets you excited to come to work every morning?
Gosh, I think, I mean, it's a range of things. We have a lot of, like, I've basically built a business around my hobbies, right? So, you know, I work with all these wonderful different IPs. You know, these the characters, most of the content we work with, you know, they're cross-generational. So we have these beautiful IPs that, you know, I love working with. I work with a wonderful group of people. We are getting our content out on more platforms than ever before. Across all of that, like, what wouldn't you be excited about? Do you know what I mean? From the conversation we've just had, I think you can probably guess that everything I'm talking about there, I'm excited about all of it, and wildly enthusiastic, I would say.
No, I'm certainly getting that feeling from you. Okay, so I'm going to go back to that last question, which was, you know, what's the single piece of advice that you've ever been given that stuck with you?
And do you know what? I genuinely don't have one, because I've been jumping around between a few, and I thought I might be able to narrow it down to a single. But what I want to say is I've had three people in my life who were phenomenal mentors. So in Electric Paper, in that first company that I worked for, a man called Johnny Parks, was ongoing mentorship, and really took me from being, honestly, an aggressive punk kid to being a functional business leader. So he was absolutely transformational, and there was just so many really, really good bits of advice along the way. Then working with my brother, where I learned, you know, about the games business, mobile business, and just, again, through tons and tons of phenomenal advice along the way. And then more recently, Debbie Bestwick. So StoryToys was acquired by a UK games company, Team 17, 5 years ago. And Debbie again, phenomenal mentor. So and the problem is I can't pin down. They've all given such good advice along the way that I couldn't pin down any one. I couldn't pick between those three, and or of any of the wonderful advice that they gave me. But I suppose what one could take from it, if you were looking for a single thing, is get good mentors in your life. Get people who are prepared to share knowledge that you can learn from, because that's going to stand over any one soundbite that I could give you right now.
Thank you. I mean, we probably need to end here, although I could probably continue chatting to you all day. It's been fascinating. So when is the creative keynote? Because I'm absolutely going to be there myself at the Children's Media Conference.
So the creative keynote is on the Wednesday evening. And I'm glad that I'll have at least one person in the audience, because I honestly, I'm an outsider in the animation space, and I imagine people are scratching their heads going, what on earth was Greg thinking, inviting this app guy across? So I'm really, really looking forward to it, and I really, really appreciate the opportunity that's being given to me here. I mean, 13 years ago, I started almost 13 years ago in StoryToys, almost to the day, possibly even to the day. And one of the first things I did was go across to CMC.
Really?
And so I went across with our commercial director at the time and our head of marketing, and we sat in the back and thoroughly enjoyed the creative keynotes, and it just. This has a lovely full circle kind of sense to it. I'm thoroughly looking forward to it. But yeah, I just hope there's an audience there.
People will be absolutely crazy not to go.
Julian, absolute pleasure talking to you. Thanks for your time.
This podcast is only made possible with a lot of behind-the-scenes support and logistical help from Janet Balmforth at Liberry Consulting, and the wonderfully erudite and charming Julian Scott. And the amazing Odie! Don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends and colleagues. We hope you've enjoyed this episode, and we look forward to welcoming you back for the next. Take care out there.